Welcome to Notes on a Painting. Notes on a Painting is a podcast by artist Olivia Kemp and art historian Esme Garlake. Together each week we will discuss a painting that one of us has chosen and researched. Our choices of painting will reflect where our tastes differ and overlap across the history of art.
This week's episode contains references to sexual assault. If this may be triggering for you, we recommend coming back to us next week or selecting another episode.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good. Yes, good. Fine, all good.
Marvelous.
So today I've chosen to look at a painting by an artist who I didn't know until very recently, called Bartholomaeus Spranger. I won't be saying it like that the whole time.
Okay.
But the painting is Salmacis, sorry, and Hermaphroditus. It was
Wow.
painted around 1580 to 1582.
Okay.
It's about like a meter tall and 82 centimeters across. So it's fairly big.
Yeah.
Oil on canvas, and it's in the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna. That
We
was.
keep coming back to the Kunsthistorische Museum, don't we?
Have you been?
No, I've not been to Vienna. It's on my
No,
it's on
me
my
neither.
list. But
Same.
their socials, like social media stuff, is always so good. So if
Yeah.
you don't follow them, you probably should because they're great.
And they just have so many artworks that I look at, and then I realize it's in Vienna.
Yeah, they have
I
the they
need to
have the
go.
Michelina Wautier show at the moment. They're the ones
Oh,
that are transferring it to RA. So yeah.
that's so cool. Okay, so we clearly this is a podcast quite obsessed with the Vienna
Here we are. We're gonna have to do like a
art.
live
Yeah, true.
live visit.
Yeah. God, that'd be good. So the sources for this chapter and the reason that I've actually chosen this painting was because I was reading a book chapter in a book, The Figure of the Nymph in Early Modern Culture.
Mhm.
And it's this particular chapter is called Salamacis, Hermaphrodite and the Inversion of Gender by Carl Enenkel, who is one of
Okay.
the editors of the book. And I came across it and I thought it was a really interesting book chapter. And yeah, you said when I told you I was doing this, you said, oh, you love like long limbs or something. And I was like, oh my God, I really do. What is wrong with me?
You
Like,
love paintings where they have like really long arms and legs.
and the thing is, I don't even know if I actually like them. I just find it really interesting that people like doing that. I probably do like them in the end, but I'm like,
Is that mannerism? What is it? Is it?
yeah, yeah. So in this, oh, I'll talk about it, but I've been very interested in mannerism from the Italian side, so kind of
Yeah.
from like the 1530s onwards. But this is from like Belgium, Antwerp time and later. So yeah, it's interesting as another little mannerist like geek out basically from my point of view. Yeah, so I used basically that article, the gallery entry from
Mhm.
the Kunsthistorische website and Wikipedia, the classic
Yeah.
combination. So yeah, would you like to describe the painting?
Yes. So the painting, um, the sort of left-hand half of the painting is a figure who appears to be female. Yep. Well, she has a boob out, so I'm
Yeah.
guessing. Um, and she's standing on one leg and is holding on to like a cloth around her body, which is really making very little attempt to cover herself up
Yeah.
in, I guess. And oh my God, I've got a sneeze just sitting in my nose, so I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Hopefully it will just sort off. And then sort of going diagonally across the composition behind the female figure is a what looks like maybe an oak tree or a tree of some sort, like an
Mm,
old tree, which is really like cutting through the composition in a really nice diagonal way. And then under the oak tree, but taking up the lower right hand half is what looks like a male figure.
Yeah.
Hard to tell. Like golden hair, 1 foot out of the water. I think it's water, and one leg in, sort of casually reclining on a rock in what looks like a pond or a lake or something. I'm not really sure. With rocks around them. Um, it looks a bit like the female figure has seen the male figure, but the male figure hasn't seen the female figure. I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
Maybe like inverting the idea of like the female gaze, the male gaze, like Susanna and the Elders sort of vibe. I'm not really sure. There's a beautiful piece of like red cloth on the left hand of the foreground, and lots of little plant details, which are really beautiful. It really feels like Italianate, or like
Mm.
maybe not Italianate specifically. I don't know. Maybe there's something kind of Rubensian in the tree and the
Mm.
foliage and the rocks and stuff. But yeah, if you asked me who it was by, I'd be really confused.
Yeah. Oh, same. I'm terrible at if I see a painting, I don't know who it's by. I'm really bad at saying
I wouldn't say
who.
Rubens because of
No.
the lady's too delicate to be a Rubens. Rubens always
Yeah.
has big legs and
Yeah.
big feet and all that. But
Yeah.
I would be very baffled by it.
Yeah, I realize once again I have come here presenting not just the elongated limbs, but also the typical, like, extremely white skin, rosy cheeked, like blonde curly locks. And I'm like, why do I like biscuit tin art so much?
Well, also you're going to be it'll be interesting this week to see if we get our account flagged by Instagram because
Oh,
presenting nudes
yeah.
on Instagram is always troublesome for us.
Yeah. I
We
mean,
had
her
to have our
boob
account
is.
verified so that we could get the pictures through. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, her boob is quite under shadow, I would say.
Yeah, we'll post it and see what happens. I'll let you know.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. So I thought maybe I would say no, I'll start with the biography. It's not like super that let me start actually with just explaining like the mannerism side of things
Mhm.
because this is a painting where, like, as you say, it's very elongated limbs, particularly in the female figure. Um, so this is Spranger in Prague's court. Like he worked later in his life in Prague around 1580s in Prague, as I'll talk about in a bit. But it was he was one of the leading figures in what is called Northern Mannerism or Central European Mannerism, but it's also called Rudolphine Mannerism
Of
because
course
of
it is.
of course, because of the Emperor Rudolph at the
Right.
time. But this style is broadly defined by extremely elongated bodies, twisted and complex poses, highly eroticized figures, opulence, and it's often rich in allegorical symbolism and mythological themes. So everything is ticked in this
Is it kind of
painting.
like mythological themes and symbolism as a guise
Yeah.
for the
Oh
erotic
yeah, for
imagery?
sure. For sure.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, just bearing that in mind as like that's the kind of so and mannerism it began really in Italy. I'm very interested in the artist Parmigianino, who was one of the first people, I guess, in Italy around like the 1520s, 1530s, who started developing this style, and Michelangelo as well is like that as well, like these long limbs, and it becomes the way I try and think about it is that like the typical high Renaissance style, like Raphael or Leonardo, you tend to associate more with like really realistic it's still ideal, very idealized, but much more realistic proportions.
Mm.
Whereas mannerism starts to be a bit of a reaction against that or in response to that, where it starts to be much more about ideas of grace and beauty being in, yeah, exaggerated forms and like really pushing it. Which
You
seems
could
to
say
be,
Botticelli's like an early proponent of that, couldn't you? Because
yeah, I mean, all
his
of,
forms are
yeah,
mental.
yeah, and you see a lot of you can see it coming out in so many figures, but I suppose it starts to be like a much more defined um school or
Yeah.
movement or whatever you want to call it, I guess from
Purposeful and,
yeah.
followed through.
Yeah. And with there's always like the art theory as well coming around these ideas. So, but that's you're right, that's coming much earlier. It's like in retrospect, you can see it
Mm.
as that. Um, but yeah, so that's why for me I found this an interesting painting because I hadn't ever really thought about mannerism past and beyond Italy,
Yeah.
which is not, I mean, that's just because I focus on Italian art
Well,
history.
I wasn't aware that that was a thing
Yeah.
outside of Italian art.
Yeah. So yeah, the biography, the kind of brief overview of his life was Spranger is I've never heard of Bartholomaeus Spranger. Sorry, again, terrible pronunciation. He's one of the most significant artists of late 16th century Europe. He was born in 1546 in Antwerp, which I think, as we've discussed at various points, it was a major artistic and trade center. So just to recap, like it's in today it's in Belgium, but at the time it was part of the Low Countries, so the Netherlands and Flanders.
We must have said that line
So
about
many
five
times, but
times
you know
by
what?
now.
If you asked me again, so what was the Low Countries? I'll be like, I'm not sure. I have to actually just read it every time.
What country was it in this year?
Like what? Yeah, it's always like it's in Belgium. It's
Yeah,
just
it's now in Belgium. Just leave it in.
yeah, like just stick with now. It's fine. Like so he came from a family of craftsmen. His father was a merchant and a rope maker. He became an apprentice at a young age to local painters, where he would have been introduced to the style of Antwerp mannerism. So it was already there in its northern kind of
Mhm.
form. Um, and in his early works, we also see the influence of Netherlandish landscape traditions, which I guess would be expected if he's
Yeah.
working in Antwerp and learning to be an artist there. So he left Antwerp in 1565 and he went to Paris. And this is again really interesting as a that there's his time in Paris and then his time in Rome, and these like this idea of like the traveling artist who learns and absorbs and then takes back is so interesting to me. So he came into contact in Paris with the school of Fontainebleau, which
Right.
dates roughly between 1530 and 1570. I guess technically it was like near the end of it, so it was sort of an established school by that point.
Mm.
This is a style of painting that had developed from a group of Italian artists who had come to the royal palace at Fontainebleau in the 1530s. Woo! It blended Italian Renaissance mannerism with French traditions. So again, elongated figures, sensual and graceful forms, and an emphasis on ornament and allegory and mythology. So he had also traveled around Italy from like 1566. So he wasn't actually in with the school of Fontainebleau for a particularly long time. He went to
Mm.
Italy 1566 to 1575, where he saw the works of Correggio and Parmigianino, who
Right.
are the like some of the key early Mannerist painters there. And he was in Rome from 1570 to 1575, where he got commissions from a variety of powerful patrons, including Cardinal Alessandro Farnese. The Farnese family is like quite familiar in Rome, like across the 16th century for patronage. Um, and so he established his reputation there as a talented draftsman and figure painter. And so he got lots of commissions for altarpieces and frescoes. But in 1575, this is his next like major move, and where so the painting we've looked at today, he didn't, like I said, in 1580, around 1580. So 5 years earlier, he was summoned to Vienna by the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian II, where he served as a court painter for the next 5 years, even though Maximilian died shortly after his arrival, but he stayed for 5 years.
Right.
So that's worked out for him. And then in 1580, the final big move was, and the most important for us today was, he moved to Prague, where he worked in a court. It was in the imperial court for Emperor Rudolph II. And he actually became a court chamberlain. Do you know what that is? I didn't know what that is. Apparently, it's a rare honor for an artist. So I guess he was like quite a high up figure in the court. Um, but this painting was made for the Cabinet of Curiosities for Emperor Rudolph II.
Okay.
Which is interesting because I think with cabinets of curiosities, um, you often think of like objects and, shells or, well, the
Yeah,
ties
you
from the
don't think
name,
of like
curiosities.
larger paintings in a Wunderkammer. You
Yeah.
kind of think about little objects, you know?
Yeah, objects and like precious jewels and things like that. So yeah, it's a good reminder that it was a real place of a lot of different things, including quite big paintings.
Mm.
Um, So that's where the mannerism really comes in, because this is where, like, again, sometimes called Rudolphine mannerism. So I guess by this point, like Spranger, as a leading artist in the court in Prague, is really becoming like, what is it, a leading figure in it. And apparently, Prague's court at the time was one of Europe's most sophisticated artistic circles. And it was a very cosmopolitan court with lots of intellectually elite patrons. And so the style actually disseminated through print reproductions of Spranger's drawings. And I
Mm.
imagine also sometimes his paintings. So they then this kind of imagery and the elongated forms and the subject matters went across Northern Europe, so Bohemia, Germany, and the Low Countries generally, like going back to where he was from, I guess,
Mm.
originally. Um, I didn't do my usual, like, what are the court politics? I just kind of skipped over that today,
You avoided
possibly.
that rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of done with the court politics. Um, but basically, in the 1600s, Rudolph II's political power started to deteriorate, but Spranger continued working in Prague until he died in 1611.
Is it an Esme episode if there isn't a section on court politics, though?
No, that's all I'm saying. That's it. I'm like, his political power started to deteriorate. That is it.
Turn
Um,
page.
Turn page, move on. Just gonna, yeah, go over that very quickly. But yeah, I definitely like looking at various, like a lot of his paintings. This I would say is quite representative. The Salamacis and Hermaphroditus, it is representative really of his style and
Mhm.
this style, and it's obviously comes at this time where he is established. He's also like making a name for himself, I guess, to an extent in this new, very elite court.
Yeah.
So um we'd expect it to be, I guess, quite yeah, confident in a way in what he's offering. Um so have you heard of the story of Salamacis and Hermaphroditus?
No. It sounds
No.
like close to the names of other famous mythological figures, but not
Yeah.
like so I heard of Salome.
Yeah, I
But it's
know.
all a
Yeah,
bit
that's true. So I hadn't heard of this one either. But I have been, for my PhD research, I've been looking at nymphs a lot,
mm,
in early 16th century Italian art. But the nymph as a figure is fascinating and obviously like key in so much of art history.
yeah.
Um, so, and a lot of what I've been looking at has been in Ovid's Metamorphoses, which, for people just who don't know, it's an epic Latin narrative poem, which was written by Ovid. It's a story from that, and I've read quite a lot of the Metamorphoses, and it is like it's really does what it says in the title. Like it's just these constant crazy transformations that are happening. It's very erotic, it's very chaotic in lots of ways, and it's beautiful. It is a good read actually. I would recommend. on a rainy day.
If you haven't read it, I recommend you reading a bit of Ovid.
It's good. Um, so Salamacis is a nymph, and Hermaphroditus is the son of Aphrodite and Hermes. So he
Right.
is a god, I guess that would make him a god. He grows into this is what I've written here. He grows into a beautiful man. Okay. That's fine. So one day he's in the woods
Hmm.
and he's by a pool, and Salamacis sees him and becomes completely infatuated with him. So she proposes marriage, and he is very confused because he's still quite an innocent young man. He doesn't know what love is, and um, Salamacis says, "Okay, that's fine. I'll leave you alone." But actually, she ends up hiding in the bushes and she watches him as he gets into the water. And then she plunges into the water as well and entwines herself around him. And this is a quote from Ovid, like a serpent when it is being carried off into the air by the king of birds. Salamacis was inflamed with desire for his naked form. The nymph's eyes blazed with passion. I'm going to read this bit because it actually gives you such a good insight into how insane Ovid is. Um, so she held him to her, struggling, snatching kisses from the fight, um, overwhelming the youth from this side and that. At last, she entwines herself face to face with his beauty. Hanging there, she twines around his head and feet and entangles his spreading wings in her coils, or as ivy often interlaces tall tree trunks. And so basically, she's there, like, assaulting him, and she prays to the gods that they're never going to be parted, and the gods fuse their bodies together, making it into one person, into a hermaphrodite. So they were not two, but a twofold form, so that they could not be called male or female, and seemed neither or either. So that's what's about to happen in this painting.
That's not
It's
pleasant.
it's
And
brutal and horrible. And that is Ovid. Like it
mhm.
is. It's very brutal and there's a lot of sexual assault and grim, violent things happening. And
Yeah,
often metamorphosis is the result of violence.
yeah.
Um, so obviously in this painting, well, first of all, like I do think even at the time, Salamacis and Hermaphroditus wouldn't have been like as it wasn't super common, like
No, it's
compared
not
to
something you
like
see a lot.
yeah, like Diana and Actaeon, say, like Actaeon turning into a stag, like that is much more common
Or that lady who
in
turns into a
history.
tree, whose name I can never remember.
Daphne.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's who I'm looking at actually for this.
Oh,
Yeah. Another like pretty violent, like horrible episode.
yeah.
But Spranger has chosen to so probably the fact that you would need to be quite learned and like to be familiar with mythology and the stories of Ovid would have appealed to this kind of courtly audience and
Yeah.
patrons. But obviously, Spranger has chosen to focus on the voyeuristic part of the story
Mm.
near the beginning, where Salamacis has decided that she'll pretend to leave, but she's actually watching Hermaphroditus. And but what is fascinating about this painting is that the way that Spranger constructs it is that actually like we're looking first and foremost really at a Salamacis body.
Yeah.
Salmacis, sorry, I keep saying it wrong. It's because I'm thinking of Salome as well, so I'm just like Salmacis's body is really, we first look at the nymph's body, and then almost through her eyes, we see the male body,
Mm.
which you picked up on. Um, and so, yeah, the Kunsthistorische website says the composition of the painting heightens the erotic nature of the scene, while the nymph, unseen and secretly, observes the handsome youth. She herself reveals her own charms. And obviously, she is a much, much bigger figure as well, just like literally
Yeah.
in the composition. Um, so Carl and Enkel, who wrote the book chapter I was talking um, about this painting, calls this a kind of quote dual striptease. So they're both taking off their clothes and they're both being looked at um, in a way that is quite voyeuristic.
I don't
So
find his figure that voyeuristic. I don't know if that's like a I don't know.
yeah, maybe it's with the knowledge of what happens and like with the knowledge that she, if we know that the next step is
Yeah.
like sexual assault and violent metamorphosis.
I think I'm just looking at it from like the life room perspective, and I'm like, he's actually covered, like, so you know,
Yeah.
it's not that voyeuristic.
Yeah. But maybe
And we're
that's
looking at
the,
her first as well, so it just
oh
seems
yeah,
kind of like
for
the element
sure.
he seems quite dampened, like in this.
Yeah. Also the light is really interesting. I don't know if it's how it's just aged over time, but he's actually quite faded
Yeah, is it maybe that I don't know if that's like a wearing
physically.
away. And again,
Yeah.
she's not even that. I don't know. I guess it's like it's a standard of the time, isn't it? But she's not
Mm.
exactly like an alluring figure. She kind of is
Mm.
like this really because she's so elongated. She's got this like presence and like structural presence where she's almost
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like a column in the left-hand side.
absolutely.
Like and you know, I guess the sort of elements of her that like the curvier elements of her aren't really that apparent. I mean, she's mostly arm and leg with a small
She
head.
is a huge arm and a huge leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there, I don't know. I mean, we don't. I don't know the ideals of. Obviously, I'm not. There was a mannerist ideal at the time, so maybe that's
Yeah. So for yeah, so an ankle calls it a serpentine pose, which I think is a good way of describing it. Because if you actually look at her pose, it's very like it's almost like a spirals around because she's got her knee, one knee, the knee behind the front leg,
yeah,
um, is up, and then kind of her foot is lifted by her hand, which reaches down,
yeah.
and
I guess his interpretation is trying to match with Ovid's description.
yeah, and but also I think, like you say, it's the ideals of the time, like how to represent a female nude. And I thought it was interesting that the apparently Rudolph II had a sculpture of Venus, which has quite similar proportions and a kind of pose, quite dynamic. Yeah, that serpentine pose, um,
Right.
which was by the Italian sculptor Bologna, made in the 1570s, so like fairly recent for the time.
Mm.
Um, and again, like that might be part of that. Well, this is what Enenkel explains. So Bologna, the sculptor's admirable mastership, consisted of complicated figura serpentinata compositions, i.e., extreme twistings and turnings of the nude body. But here, Spranger is like painting the sculpture. And it's cool that you say she's like a column because that is quite a sculptural
Mm.
presence there. And especially with the light on her, she is very sculptural and
Yeah, and how alabaster she is as well.
yeah, I mean, yes, that absolutely. But she's a nymph, so her sexuality is fr part of her appeal, and it's again, like you said earlier, it's the excuse to show a highly eroticized female body. Oh, well,
Mm.
she's a nymph, so it's fine. It's
Thus,
it's
it's permissible.
it's permissible. It's like that. There's Rubens comes in, doesn't he?
Yes.
Um,
Rubens comes up a lot when we're talking about nymphs because there's a
yeah,
lot of Rubens nymphs.
yeah. So I do think Hermaphroditus certainly is n nowhere near as visible. I
Mm.
think that the what Enenkel in his dual striptease thing is talking about, I think, is that it's the knowledge of this story, it's the narrative that puts again, and I don't think it's working against everything we've said, like the fact that she is this highly sexualized figure,
Mm.
that she is exposed and very eroticized, that I think adds to her as voyeur. Like it's the classic like threat of the sexually liberated woman.
Yeah,
Um,
terrifying.
Terrifying. Although she is a little bit terrifying because after the Ovid description and her how just crazily elongated her limbs are. Like this
Yeah.
is like she is this like yes, she's quite like Venus, but she's also a bit, I don't know, Medusa,
Yeah.
like temptress kind of figure. Um and Hermaphroditus is also, interestingly, his pose recalls another kind of ancient Roman sculpture, which is the spinario, which is the thorn puller, where
Right.
it's like a seated male youth who has his one of his legs up and is like pulling a thorn out from his foot. And I guess again, like there's a sculptural appeal to him. But yeah, I mean, his leg is lifted. You can't see his his genitals at all. Um, yeah, he's blissfully unaware.
Mm.
The other thing is this massive tree in the middle,
Yeah. I'm
which
guessing, and that's supposed to be what she's hiding behind. Like, so she has to be hidden in some way, but also both
Mm,
figures need to be viewable. And the tree isn't as obstructive as if you put in, you know, like a wall or a full
yeah,
hedge or something so you can see
yeah,
through it. It has that window element to it
mm,
where some of the
yeah,
landscape behind can come through. But it
yeah.
is an odd structure.
It is, and it's very um that spatially, it's quite unclear how these two figures actually relate to each other.
Mm,
I think possibly also because of the water. I don't know, like the water in the foreground in front of and the land, like the riverbank or the bank by the water, is quite. I don't know if the paint is just damaged or has faded, but it's quite hard to tell how they actually relate.
yeah.
So there is a feeling of quite abstracted is the wrong word, but
It's quite like
dreamlike.
a surreal space, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I have been looking a lot at, so my chapter at the moment is about nymphs and trees, and nymphs are very often, I mean, they're nature spirits, so they can be spirits of water or wind or things like that. But trees are very closely related to nymphs as, yeah, symbols of nature. And I think the kind of it is a bit strange, but the body of a tree, because of these associations with nymphs like Daphne who have turned into trees, they can also have this, they can help to bring out like the erotic appeal of nymphs often.
Mm,
They like, so the tree here, it's over Hermaphroditus, but in a way it's, I think it's more on the side of Salmacis. It's like it's helping her, it's covering her, it's providing the cover so she can look at him. I don't
yeah.
know. I just see it as like the trees are quite like they're in cahoots with the nymphs often.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever said in cahoots in my life. But
And she
there you
probably
go.
never will again.
No, that's it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think um it's just it's a very it's an appealing painting. It's
Mm,
quite disturbing when you actually know what's going on. Um, both from like what Salmacis is going to do narratively, but also I think from just how she is so, yeah, she's so exposed.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, there's kind of an impending sense of doom.
yeah. But it also, I think, like you were saying at the start, and you were describing it about the gender ambiguity.
Mm,
That's interesting. I mean, I don't think I think that's part of just the idealized forms at the time. But for viewers today as well, when you realize this is about like the birth of Hermaphrodite and the kind of origin myth of the figure of Hermaphrodite, that is an interesting angle as well.
Thank you for joining us this week. We can never be 100% sure of the accuracy of historical events. However, the information we are providing is based on our own research. If there's a painting you'd like to hear us discuss, please let us know on social media. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for weekly episodes.